They are finding heads in public parks, arms and legs in trash bags, bodies wrapped in blankets outside their homes.
They are young men just like me. We look normal, but we're sick in the head. I see myself as a good guy, but if you mess with me, I'll f you up. I'll kill you.
Have you ever wondered what it takes for someone to become one of the most feared hitmen for a cartel? Meet an anonymous hitman who lived through this reality, a guy whose journey from an innocent teen to a monstrous assassin is as terrifying as it gets. But what if I told you that he's now changed his mind and crossed over to the good side? You see, as overwhelming as the situation sometimes gets over in Mexico, stories like these are what keep hope alive that maybe someday we're going to see the end of the cartel's reign of terror. Let's uncover this fascinating tale of redemption together, and you'll want to stick around until the very end because nothing about this case is what you'd expect.
Presentar armas, ya. Firmes, ya. Posición 1, ya.
Our story begins in 2012, when this anonymous hitman was just 17. Living a life tainted by extreme levels of poverty, he felt humiliated and desperate. His story is just like many others. Joining a cartel might be completely out of the question for people like you or me, but to people living in the rugged areas of Mexico, where just about any resource is incredibly scarce, cartel life sure looks promising. It's like a one-way ticket out of misery. That being said, he started hanging out with the wrong crowd and eventually ended up engaging in petty crimes such as small-scale theft. So how did he cross the line between a small-time criminal and a full-blown cartel member? Well, it can all be traced back to one particularly dark day when slit an innocent man's throat on a dare, out of all things, caught the attention of a gang leader from the Guerrero's Unidos cartel who saw a certain spark in him, a potential for cruelty that few possess. He was then spirited away to a camp in the Mexican mountains where he spent months and months training to become something other than human. His training started with chopping up a naked corpse with a machete, a vile act designed to filter out what the cartel considered to be bad weeds or people who were simply just not cut for the grueling job that laid before them. So those who hesitated or refused, let's just say that they weren't greeted with a firm handshake and a nice walk up to the very door they came in through. It's something straight out of a horror movie, right? Our protagonist went on to spend 6 tough months in this very camp. Freezing nights, no food, and orders to hunt and kill any cartel members who didn't measure up. One vivid memory he shared was of being forced to dispose of someone because the guy ahead of him caught a bullet to the head for failing to follow orders. He said that he eventually turned into an animal, so he had no other choice but to block out any emotion and pretend as if someone else was doing these horrific acts. What he's describing right here is called dissociation. And for those of you who don't know what dissociation means, it's basically when a person reaches such a massive psychological breaking point that their only way to cope becomes escaping their own body. In short, it's when the trauma you're experiencing is too much to deal with, so your mind starts shutting down. It's not a good place to be in, and some people never truly come back from it. Nevertheless, he managed to complete his training. He was now a full-blown trained assassin, ready to take on horrible cartel assignments. This is when the real story starts. So, after graduating from the school of savagery, he plunged headfirst into the brutal cartel dirty work. For the next 5 years, he worked as a hitman for the Guerrero's Unidos, ending over 100 people's lives, all in the name of maintaining his gang's grip on the drug trade and fending off their many rivals. His job was pretty much never-ending too. It was a revolving door of horrific task after horrific task. Wanting to be the most feared sicario in the world, he didn't hesitate, didn't look back. He was a well-oiled killing machine. But was there ever a chip in his armor? Just once. He was so haunted by one botched operation in particular, one that stuck to whatever was left of his conscience. He mistook a student for a rival cartel member. He says that the student's face and his pleading eyes still haunt him to this day. Was that the first crack in the facade that the Guerrero's Unidos built for him? We can never truly know for sure. One thing's clear, it all came to an abrupt halt on one fateful day. In 2017, his violent spree hit a block when he was arrested, betrayed by one of his partners, who sold him out to save himself, and authorities had enough evidence to put him away for many lifetimes. But in an unexpected twist, the police chief decided to launch an experimental informant program. Desperate to combat the high crime rates, they struck a deal: his freedom in exchange for the information that could crack open the Guerrero's Unidos operations. And the bet paid off. The intel he provided led to the conviction of over 100 cartel members, causing crime rates to fall in Morelos. But the success was short-lived. You know what they say, no good deed ever goes unpunished, and the program fell apart when the police chief who spearheaded it was transferred somewhere else. Without his vision, the initiative collapsed completely, and many informants slipped right back into crime. What about our protagonist? Well, he felt that he truly left his life of crime behind, so he fled instead, but not before his brother paid the ultimate price for it, and, presumably, he was tragically mistaken for him. You see, once you choose to enter into the twisted world of the cartels, danger's always going to be there, somewhere, lurking in the shadows, regardless of whether or not you decide to leave. His brother's passing is a testament to that. Neither you or your loved ones will ever truly be safe again. So, right now, he's on the run, and we're likely never going to hear from him again. How does someone live with the blood of more than 100 people on their hands? Can a person molded into a killing machine ever find redemption or peace? These are questions even he might not have answers to. What's clear, though, is that he regrets the paths he took and the lives he's ruined, including his own. To truly grasp our hitman's torment, however, we need to better understand the very beast that created him in the first place, the Guerreros Unidos. This cartel, while not as universally known as the Sinaloa or Zetas, carved a pretty impressive name for themselves with their savagery and influence. And if you thought their training camps were the worst of it, then you're in for one big surprise. The origins of Guerreros Unidos trace back to the 1990s with the rise of the Beltran Leyva cartel, led by the brothers Carlos, Alfredo, Hector, and Marcos. The Beltran Leyva organization initially operated as an ally to yet another famous cartel, the Sinaloa cartel. Things took a violent turn in 2008, however, when the two cartels declared war on each other, leading to a carnage that took Mexico by surprise.
Carlos Rivas says these bullet holes came from huge guns.
When the gunfire broke out, my wife's kids had to take cover. They had to hide behind that building.
Innocent citizens caught in the crossfire of all this were left having to fend for themselves.
When the war between the cartels began, a lot has happened. They killed my son and my father. Before that, I lost a brother. He was 14, 15, and then the other brother.
And, as if things weren't already getting bad, the aftermath of this war had yet another set of unintended consequences. It birthed these new criminal groups who were eager to fill the power vacuum left behind by fallen cartels. Guerreros Unidos was one of the groups that emerged from all this chaos, initially comprising members from a faction known as Los Pelones, under the leadership of Edgar Valdez Villarreal, alias La Barbie. Another key figure in the early days was Cleotilde Toribio Renteria, known as El Tilde. But following the fall of the Beltran Leyva cartel and the capture of La Barbie, El Tilde and his allies decided to forge their own path, ultimately forming Guerreros Unidos in around 2011. But then, the cartel found itself entangled in conflicts with other up-and-coming groups like Los Rojos, La Mano con Ojos, and the South Pacific Cartel, all of which stem from the fragmentation of the old Beltran Leyva organization.
The town has become a place where these two gangs clash.
Their quest for dominance led to turf wars, particularly in regions such as Iguala, Taxco, Ciudad Altamirano, and Cuernavaca. These confrontations escalated violence to unprecedented levels, making Guerrero the state with the highest number of homicides in all of Mexico.
Gang members paralyzing traffic with spike strips, charred tractor trailers lining the highway.
They are finding heads in public parks, arms and legs in trash bags, bodies wrapped in blankets outside their homes.
And El Tilde's capture in July 2012 could have spelled doom for the cartel, but they proved remarkably adaptable. It's a story we're all too familiar with. In this game of chess that is the cartel underworld, members are never kings or bishops. They're all pawns, leaders included. That means that anytime one falls, they're still easy to replace. That being said, leadership quickly shifted to a man called Mario Casarubias Salgado, alias El Sapo Guapo. An adept trafficker, Mario leveraged his connections to further expand the cartel's influence, even employing routes involving fruit trailers and passenger buses destined for the United States.
La droga que exportan Guerreros Unidos es sobre todo harina blanca, le llaman, y algo de cocaína. Estadounidenses se dieron cuenta que mucha de la harina que llegaba a Chicago era provista por Guerreros Unidos.
Under Mario's reign, Guerreros Unidos extended their reach, even clashing with La Familia Michoacana. And despite Mario's arrest in April 2014, the cartel continued to thrive under yet another new set of leaders, Gonzalo Martín Sousa Neves and Benjamin Mondragon, known as El Benjamon. Each new leader met with fate's cruel twist, either through arrest or through actually unaliving themselves in order to avoid capture, as in Benjamin's case. And all that sounds incredibly shocking. However, it was the horrific event of September 26, 2014 that truly established Guerreros Unidos' notoriety. On this day, local law enforcement, who were allegedly conspiring with the cartel, detained 43 students from the Ayotzinapa Rural Teachers College. Only a handful made it out alive. These students intended to take 3 buses to travel to a protest in Mexico City. The following events led to the tragic disappearance and presumed massacre of these young men.
Cuando cruzamos el Zócalo, salen las primeras patrullas y empiezan a accionar sus armas. Interceptan al tercer autobús en el cual yo iba, inmediatamente empiezan a disparar. Después nos empezamos a defender con piedras nosotros, con lo que encontramos. Y aparte les gritábamos que por qué nos disparaban si nosotros no teníamos armas.
One can only imagine the cruel fate that each of these young souls suffered at the hands of these men who have little to no mercy to spare when it comes to their fellow human beings. But wait, it gets worse. The official narrative, one that was even backed by then President Enrique Peña Nieto, claimed that corrupt law enforcement willingly handed the students over to Guerreros Unidos, who mistakenly thought they were members of the Los Rojos cartel. Needless to say, the families of the victims were outraged.
Estamos aquí con la intención de decirle a usted que le ponemos un plazo no mayor de 2 o 3 días para saber resultados concretos. No están en las cosas. Y eso quiere decirnos a nosotros que nuestros muchachos están vivos. La agonía es larga. Si usted ve ya el enojo de cada uno de los padres, la desesperación, no creo que a partir de ese día usted también pueda dormir tranquilo.
As investigations ensued, contradictions and speculations emerged, causing a lot of confusion over the government's version and even uncovering potential ties to drug smuggling activities.
Y no hay ninguna intervención, hay una total inacción del Estado para tomar medidas preventivas, para cercar el lugar y proteger a la gente que está ahí.
Lo que queda claro es que había una gran comunicación, presunta complicidad entre Guerreros Unidos y el procurador de Guerrero.
Is there no end to the rampant corruption? This mass abduction brought Guerreros Unidos front and center into the international spotlight, igniting some serious outrage and triggering endless demands for justice.
El gobierno va a pagar por todo lo que está haciendo, porque este es un crimen de Estado. Es el Estado quien se lo llevó y el Estado no los tiene que devolver.
This event revealed the deep tangle between cartels and corrupt local governments, and people suddenly realized how the lines between crime and authority often blur.
These students, they were politically involved in their communities, and so that makes us think this is political. That's where we would like to intervene in the discussion, because we think this is much more complicated than that.
But nothing really lasts forever, does it? And the Guerreros Unidos cartel is no exception. So, around the time that our hitman decided to break free, the cartel was also going through its downfall. Mexico's armed forces delivered a spectacular blow against one of the country's leading drug cartels when an Apache helicopter rained down machine gun fire on a residence in the Pacific resort of Nayarit, where the leader of the Beltran Leyva organization was holed up, killing him and 7 members of his organization. And, in part, this is thanks to the many people who came forward and testified against the cartel, willingly or otherwise, including our very own repentant hitman. Sadly, however, things aren't so black and white. Remember when I said that cartel members are more like pawns in a twisted game of chess? Well, their ability to quickly replace captured or slain leaders came in handy yet again. And it's precisely this incredible resilience that is both their strength and, ironically, their Achilles heel. You see, the more they grow, the more vulnerable they become to infiltration and defections. How does such a cartel maintain control and keep one step ahead of everyone? By rewarding loyalty with money and power, while punishing betrayal with swift retaliation, of course. And hitmen are a huge part of this, which is why we need to better understand how the cartel even manages to recruit and train them in the first place. I'll give you one scary fact. Most of these sicarios get their start early, very early.
Presentar armas, ya. Firmes, ya. Posición 1, ya.
So here's a disturbing trend that's all too real. Cartels are turning to teenagers to fill their ranks. Imagine kids as young as 10 or 11 being lured into a life of crime, becoming loyal foot soldiers, or even feared assassins. But why target such young minds? Ever wonder why kids are the ideal candidates for the grueling job description of a sicario?
How old is the little dude over there? 13. That is young, isn't it, to get involved in this game?
Pues está pequeño, pero entre más pequeño más aprende y le gusta.
Think about it. These kids often come from really poor backgrounds. The idea of easy money, power, and respect is pretty tempting, when the alternative is a life of hard, low-paying work, or even worse, total, abject poverty. So for kids from all throughout Mexico who have no other real option, joining a cartel can seem like a clear escape. Cartels are smart about their recruitment. They know kids are impressionable and can be easily shaped into whatever it is that they desire. And since these kids often have no real role models to look up to, they even end up seeing the cartel as their savior, sometimes even their family. Once they're in, they go through these brutal training camps, much like the one the anonymous hitman was in, and they're designed to strip away any trace of empathy or hesitation.
I was going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, got invited to Mexico. I didn't know what was going on at first. And I see about 6 people kneeling down. Then the individual, the person in charge, they start laughing. And I think they saw that scared, panicked look in my face and asked me if I had ever killed somebody.
Can you imagine being 13 and being forced to watch on as other members execute some innocent victim, only to then be forced to shoot someone yourself? It's horrific, but it's real. This kind of psychological manipulation ensures these kids stay loyal and makes it almost impossible for them to leave, even if they want to. The longer they stay in, the more their loyalty is ingrained. So now, you've got these perfectly engineered killing machines who are more than willing to do all of that dirty work. But it's not just poverty and desperation driving these kids. The allure of violent prestige is a huge part of it too. Cartels don't just offer a job, they offer fame. Kids are drawn to the promise of power, weapons, and status among their peers. And social media only makes this worse by glorifying cartel life with videos and images that create a romanticized view of their operations.
Ven todo este dinero que tengo aquí. Yo no lo gané robando ni siendo narco. No, siendo narco sí.
If respect is something you've never known, wouldn't you be tempted to become the next cool guy with a gun? The reality, though, is far worse. Films and games might make gang life look glamorous, but the real thing is brutal, harrowing, and often pretty short-lived anyway. Many of these kids don't make it past their teenage years. Those who do are left severely traumatized and their mental state warped by the violence they've witnessed and committed. What happens when these young recruits want out? Well, leaving safely is completely off the table. The same violence they inflicted on others now hangs over them. It's a vicious cycle of violence and manipulation.
He pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him. And I just shot him. And he said he was putting me on his payroll.
And then there's the legal system in Mexico, which often makes things worse. Juvenile justice is pretty forgiving, and cartels exploit this as much as they can. They know young recruits won't face harsh sentences, making them even more disposable, and while also less risky. While authorities do frequent crackdowns, the sheer number of minors involved in criminal activities is mind-boggling. We're talking more than 30,000 kids.
It's a job for kids who have the street in their blood, who've grown up with violence.
But there's hope. Some community programs aim to offer these kids an alternative path with education, vocational training, and psychological support. These initiatives try to break the cycle of recruitment by tackling the root causes of why so many kids turn to crime. But these solutions take time, effort, and most importantly, a safe environment for the children to grow. Imagine the psychological toll on these kids. They grow up knowing only violence, and their sense of normality becomes totally skewed. Rehabilitation for such deeply traumatized individuals is a long and complex process. How do you teach empathy to someone who's had to abandon it to survive? Breaking this cycle isn't just about law enforcement. It's about fundamentally changing the socio-economic landscape from which these cartels draw their strength. It's a battle that requires community effort, government intervention, and international cooperation. Think about it. If we can improve living conditions, provide education, and create job opportunities, we can give these kids a real chance to choose a different path. The story of our anonymous hitman and countless others like him underscores the urgency of finding solutions. These aren't just isolated cases, but part of a larger, systemic problem. They need a way out, and it's up to us to help create one. So, what do you think? Can we, as a society, provide these kids with the alternatives they need to avoid the clutches of cartel life? It's a tough challenge, but with combined efforts, it's possible to make a difference. Feel free to voice your opinions in the comment section below so we can keep this conversation going. Meanwhile, if you've enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up. If you want to stay updated on all things cartel, then make sure to also subscribe. Until next time, stay safe.